we've counted lots of different note values, and now I want to count some of the rest values because you're likely to see those as you're playing your music. Let's just review. So if you have a note that gets one beat, one count, we're going to say do. Here we go. Do, 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 do. If you know that old song, rain, rain, go away, come again another day. Do, 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 day, do, day, do, do. Alright? If you have a note that gets two counts, or three, or four, you could just hold do, do, like that. But I prefer to do some more stuff. I think you should change the pitch of your voice, do, and sometimes even change the dynamics or the volume, because that helps me when I count to feel the whole duration of the note. So if a note gets 4 beats, I go like this, do. I change my pitch by rising, and each pitch helps me to feel a new beat. I change my dynamics by getting louder or quieter, do. And sometimes I'll even move my body. I really think it's important to involve your body as you count, especially if you are a musician who has to sit still or stand still, like singers, classical singers at least, they have to be still. It's really hard to count if you have to stand like a statue and you can barely move at all. Whereas, if you're like a clarinetist, I saw this clarinet recital, this guy was playing some concerto, and he's like, crazy. So anyway, singers have to stand still. Alright, if you have rests, though, you can either say just shh, or you can whisper, do, or you can make whatever other sound you want, but I think it's important to have an action for a rest, even though it's silence. The silence is as important as the notes. If you don't believe me, then just go watch 433 by John Cage. The whole piece is silence, and that's the point, right? We won't get into that right now. If there's a rest that gets 4 beats, and usually in the beginning of piano study, a quarter note gets 1 beat, so a quarter rest gets 1 beat. Rest that gets 4 beats would be a whole rest. It looks like a rectangle, sort of hanging down under the 4th staff. Here's a picture of it. Okay, so if I see that, and the time signature is 4-4, then I just count. I still articulate with my tongue, so I can feel each of the beats, but I don't send any sound through my vocal cords. I just like that. If I'm looking at a half rest, which is like the rectangle facing up from the 3rd line of the staff, here's a picture of it. Okay, so a half rest, I'm just going to go, because it gets 2 beats, a half note, do, a half rest. Okay, if I see a quarter rest, it looks like a squiggly lightning bolt or Harry Potter scar on steroids or something, then I'll just go, because it gets 1 beat, at least in a 4-4 or a 3-4 or a 2-4 or 5-4 meter. Okay, the quicker the rests are, their symbols start to change a little bit. An 8th rest looks a little bit like a 7 with a calligraphy loop on it, and so since the beat is dividing into 2 parts, we can say do-day, 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 or we can just go like that. The 16th rest, oh by the way, here's a picture of the 8th rests. Alright, the 16th rest is kind of like an 8th rest, but it has 2 little squiggly, I don't know what you call them, curvy lines, just like a 16th note has 2 sideways beams. Here are some pictures of 16th notes. Okay, and to divide the beat into 4 parts, do-ta-data, 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 do-ta-data. So I would just count that. Okay, sounds kind of silly when I'm doing it for myself, but hopefully that won't stop you from trying it. Alright, let's combine now some easy notes and rests, and then some quicker notes and rests. You probably won't have to see 16th rests very often at least in the early part of your study. And if you see them later, just divide that beat into 4 parts. Do-ta-dee-ta, and either it's sound for a note or silence for a rest. Here's a half note and a half rest. Here's the sound of it. Do, and here's the picture of it. Okay, now let's do a dotted half note. A dot next to a note means the note is longer. So a half note with a dot is equal to 3 quarter notes, or in this case, 3 beats. Here I go. Do, and then if I have a quarter rest after it, do. Here's a picture of that. All right, let's alternate some quarter notes and quarter rests. Do, do. So you have a note and a rest, a note and a rest. It looks like this. Okay, here's another iteration of quarter notes and quarter rests. Do, do. And this is what it looks like. Okay, here's another one. More rests, fewer notes. Here we go. Do. And here's what that looks like. Cool. So we've done half notes, dotted half notes, quarter notes. Let's do some eighth notes. Do-day, 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 do-day. If I insert a rest there, it might sound like this. Do-day, do-day. And here's a picture of that. Alright, if you have a bunch of eighth rests and a bunch of eighth notes, you might see eighth notes that are individuals and they have just a curvy pennant type flag, or instead of having 2 of them beamed together. If you have alternating eighth notes and eighth rests, it'll sound like this. Do, 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 do. And here's a picture of that. But what if the rest is on the beat and the eighth notes are after the beat? Doesn't matter. You're still dividing the beat into 2 parts. So you're still going to say do-day, 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 do-day. Here's with the rests on the beat and the notes in between the beat. Day, 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 day. And here's a picture of that. Okay, so these are a couple different examples of where you might see rests and notes combined in a measure. If it helps you, you can write in 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and sometimes I do that. You could write in the rhythm solfege, do-day, 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 if you want. Or you can come up with your own symbol language, whatever works for you. But I just want you to realize and remember that when you see a rest, you just think, alright, is it dividing the beat into 2 parts or into 4 parts? And then you know you should say do-day, do-day to count it, or do-ta-data, do-ta-data, do-ta-data. I hope that helps. We'll go more over rests later on as we get into some other concepts, but that's an introduction at least.